Let's begin.
So we're here with Austin McRobbie, and this is a Husband and Fire podcast, and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
You're a husband.
Uh-huh.
Okay, 10 years married.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
10 years experience.
Okay, good. 2 daughters?
2 daughters, 5 years old and 2.5.
5 and 2.5. Okay, so how's the youngest sleeping?
Sleeping great. We are trying for number 3.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll be back to not sleeping again.
Good. Well, so you're getting rest, except for your wife's always on you for, it's time! You gotta try! Every man loves the trying time.
Right. Well, before we went through the trying time, it was the I'm not sure if we should try time, which was very different, but it's good. I've learned through the journey how to, kind of understand and make, men and women we just look at the world in different ways sometimes. And it's been a 10-year journey of seeing the world through a woman's eyes. And understanding her. And
a particular woman.
Yeah, exactly. And I live by a personal motto of happy wife, happy life. If I can do things to, within reason, accommodate and make my wife happy, it affects our whole home.
Cool. So we have 3 kids, and I think about that age, 2.5, is about the time when our third, around that time, within 6 to 12 months, is when our third made herself known through a pregnancy test. But for us, we were not trying. For us, it was bonus. Icing on the cake is our third. So I definitely understand the world of 3 kids. We have a boy and 2 girls. But
okay. How old are they now?
So oldest is 15, middle is 12, and the youngest is 9.
Okay.
Yeah. So I understand the life. And Tanya and I, we kind of, in our practice, working with couples, we kind of target the people that are, in my mind, it's like from grade school to empty nest. So technically you would be like outside of our target market as far as like what we profess. Of course, we work with anyone who wants to work with us, but once you get through that like baby making time, and then the kids are to grade school, all of a sudden some freedom comes that you haven't had in a while, and you're going to be in that category because how old's your oldest?
She's 5, so she's going into kindergarten next year.
Yeah, so probably it'll be a 10-year period or so of this, like before all the kids, once the youngest is going into kindergarten, then all of a sudden you remember what it's like to have a little bit of freedom, because that they go to school, unless you're doing homeschool, that's a different thing, but and when they go to school, all of a sudden you're like, oh, we don't have kids in our home 24/7 anymore. And we love to work with those people because, it's all of a sudden you remember, and it's been 10 years or more since I really looked at you as a person, So it's kind of a fun place that we like to work, that kind of like that, grade school to empty nest. Because empty nest is another scary time of transition, right? But you're in that time of just like, it's just like survive.
It's triage.
Yes.
It's less so now that our youngest is 2.5. But it's just it's almost like team assemble. My wife and I, we have to be this almost united front, because our girls they're going through so much rapid change and emotions. Our oldest, Lily, she has these very big emotions, and she'll just, when she was 3, it was, they say the terrible 2s. For us, it was the terrible 3s. Just drop down, knock out tantrums, and it upped the stress in our house. And so it was learning how to cope and survive and make it through.
Yeah. So you're on that. We went to a comedy it was a date night comedy night, and so the comedian was talking about these kind of things. He was saying he was like talking about when you have two kids, it's like man on man. And you go to the third kid, and then you go the zone.
The zone, yeah.
And then I can't remember exactly how he talked about it, but the fourth kid, you're a referee. I think that's what it was. When you have the fourth kid, now you're just a referee. You're not even playing defense anymore. You're just trying to make sure
penalty foul.
People don't kill each other. And then he's like 5 or more. You're just in the stands. You're not even on the field anymore. You're just observing. You're like eating popcorn, watching the plays go on. I thought I've heard something like that before, but I thought he just killed it as far as the way he describes it. So you're going into zone defense. Congratulations.
All right.
Hopefully soon. Right. Still in the trying time.
Yeah.
But okay, so Austin, tell me about what you do. You do something similar to what we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
So very similar. I work with 2 groups of people. I work with couples, more couples that are in their first 15 years of marriage, primarily. Okay. Working a coaching process to help them develop deeper connection, more shared purpose, and as well as a faith-based component, helping them grow in their relationship with God. Cool. And then additionally, I work with individuals that are dealing with self-care issues. They're feeling stuck in their life. They're feeling like, I just can't manage my life. And so I'm coaching them through a process of what does it look like to balance relationships and emotions and stressors to really thrive. I think that's been really a lifelong mission of mine for myself personally, for my family. For those I help is how do we get from that survival state, that stress state, to really thriving, to really enjoying life and saying, this is the life I've wanted. So
what's the state of somebody who is like you can really help, who comes to you? I'm sure there's like lots of different ways you can help people, but if you think about the person who you can make the biggest impact on, like that one person, what's going on in their life typically that your process can help them with?
So again, it's looking at couples. It's a couple that maybe has a couple kids. Again, they're in that first 10 to 15 year window of their marriage, and they're just not having that level of intimacy, connection, and fun. And they're not necessarily like, okay, one of us is walking out yet. But there's just there's a disconnect, and they're maybe educated, maybe they've tried some things, maybe they've read some books on communication, but there's something about that resonant. We're just not feeling the love. Okay. And then with the
they once had it, now they're just not feeling it. Maybe there's a little bit of combativeness going on, or at least dissonance.
Yeah, there could be an issue that crops up. A lot of times it's maybe like somebody dealing with like a pornography issue or different things like that. Those issues can be symptomatic of deeper disconnection issues. Okay. It could be a level of conflict that's not working for them. But they're desiring a relationship that is like how they started and more. Okay. That's that fun, that friendship. And there's just something really about the way I look at it. It's a heart-to-heart connection. Okay.
So you help them get back to that heart-to-heart connection.
Exactly.
And somehow along the lines they've lost it. Do you know, is there... I know that there's... I want to kind of go into like as specific as possible. I know there's like a broad stroke, but if you think about, because there's a guy watching this that maybe, or listening to this, that maybe is you're the ideal on the planet person that this guy needs to talk to. When you think about that, like that specific person, what's going on in their life? What's going on in his life right now?
That's a great question, Scott. I'm looking at that man, that husband who he desires to have that kind of marriage that is connected, but he's going through the stress of, I can't make my wife happy. Okay. I'm trying, but something happened or something's going on. She's dealing with something, I'm dealing with something. and we just don't have the connection anymore. And this man wants it, and he's probably a man coming from some kind of faith-based background as well, and wants that as a part of a coaching process for him. But he's really desiring that connection, but this man maybe doesn't fully understand his own story. There's ways that he doesn't understand his emotions, doesn't understand relationships, and there's ways that he just can't maybe make sense of his wife's behavior or why she isn't crazy about him anymore.
Okay. So he comes to you with the complaint. The biggest complaint that's presenting is, I can't make my wife happy.
Yeah, he's coming in, I can't connect to my wife.
And
maybe under the surface is I don't really know how to connect to myself. But his pain is more related to his marriage.
Well, it's at least presenting, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's what I've got, several couples, that I'm working with right now where it's that kind of thing where it's the husband isn't really interested in personal development. He's just plugging along. He's a fix-it kind of guy. But his wife, the fix-it is not cutting it in the marriage. The wife wants a guy that shares his heart, that shares his emotions, that knows how to communicate at a deeper level than just, here's what I'm fixing at work. She wants to really know him. And so that would be his pain.
So what's the first baby step that again, this guy that's listening right now, that he can implement right away? What would you suggest? Like, do this, try this, look there, what comes up?
Well, I may be jumping the gun, but I know you're going to ask a question at some point. What does an awakened man mean?
Go ahead.
And I think the baby step, the answer for me of what an awakened man is a man that understands his own story and understands where his story fits into the broader narrative of the meaning of his life and the people that orbit in his life.
I like that.
And so that man, the baby step right now, practically what you can do is just stop and pay attention to yourself. Take 5 minutes to sit with yourself and be able to, as opposed to, I have an idea, go do it. Just recognize your thoughts. Become a little more awake or aware. Become aware of what you're feeling as you have certain thoughts. Become aware of what your body is feeling as you're doing. Just this kind of starting to awaken to yourself and not just living the reactionary life.
So stop trying to do so much and just become aware. And you've mentioned a few times, it sounds like there's quite a body connection component to what you do. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, I think stress, with working the number of couples I've worked with, I think stress has a huge negative effect on marriage, or rather the way that we manage stress as two individuals in a marriage has an effect. And if part of your story has been part of your life's journey has been not knowing how to properly manage stress, it's gonna manifest in your marriage either where one person is in blame mode. I see that, especially just generalizing. I see a dynamic where a lot of wives are in blame mode and a lot of husbands are in fix-it/dissociate mode. So the husbands are responding to stress by checking out, becoming not present, distracting themselves, playing video games, whatever. Not that playing video games are bad, but they're using these things to remove themselves from their stress. Whereas, again, generally speaking, a lot of these wives are responding to their stress with blame. And they're putting an over proportionate amount of blame on their husband for how they feel. And it may be related to some trigger to having maybe a dad that was checked out as well. It's not so important to find that exact meaning, but more deal in the moment with how does each spouse handle stress. And part of that is that self-awareness, becoming aware of how you're responding to things. Because when we become aware, then we can make conscious in the moment choices. But when we're living just from idea, do it, or thought, share it, or I need to fix this, I fix it right now, we're trying too hard. And it's kind of this ironic things that these wives will ask their husbands for things, but the husband almost takes that as so much of a pressure that they just try harder, but they're self-defeating in that, as opposed to, all right, stop trying, really become aware. And that's going to help you actually better please your wife and connect with your wife.
So what's a practical thing that he can do to start? Because, okay, so let me what I'm hearing is the guy needs to stop immediately responding, stop trying to fix, stop taking everything she's saying or presenting as I gotta do something, and just getting into this place of awareness. And there must be a process to get to that place, because that's like, if you've been on this hamster wheel life, to just say get off the hamster wheel to the hamster is like, like how, right? So is there practical stuff? Like, what comes to mind for me, what's happened in my life is, yoga has been a major part of helping me kind of get to where you're talking about. Is that in the mix, or what is the typical go-to stuff for you?
Yeah, I think certainly movement and any form of exercise is helpful. Some of my most stressed clients are the ones that don't exercise, which I find interesting. I just see that
interesting correlation.
Yeah, right? a little correlation or connection there. I think generally as a society and culture, we live way too much in our heads and our minds, and not enough in our hearts and our bodies. And so I like to walk it more out as baby steps. That it's not you need to get to the end goal right away. It's about I really try to chunk it down to what's the next step for you. Maybe it's just becoming, when a conflict happens in your marriage, becoming more aware of why that is and paying attention to your responses as that happens. And then we can work later on fixing or changing your response. It may be taking some time to pay attention to your body. It may be prescribing for a couple to take some time to intentionally connect. One of the exercises I do in my office that is incredibly powerful is having leading a couple and making eye contact with each other, and one person just asking open-ended, more emotionally directed questions to the other, and just listening and drawing that person out, not reacting, not talking, turning it back to themselves, but just a focus on the other person. That in itself is, I think any husband at home, if you just go home, look your wife in the eye and just ask her a question like, how are you really doing? And don't react. No matter what she says, just respond, say, wow, thanks for sharing that. Like, tell me more. I guarantee that's going to open her up at a broader level. She's going to feel really heard and understood. Right.
She's going to be, because I'm assuming he's probably never done that, or it's been a long time. And that's just going to totally pattern interrupt her brain. And she's going to know at least something's going on here. Maybe her heart and her spirit just leap, like, what? You're really actually paying attention to me? You're actually seeing me? I can imagine that could be a very powerful thing to do.
It's very transformative and experiential. I've had couples come into my office where the wife is so angry and mistrusting of the husband, and when I teach him how to care for her in a certain way, all her defenses come down, and she's back to being in love with this man and open to him. And so I think openness breeds openness, whereas closing up breeds closing up. We reap what we sow. And so if we can show up and stay open, but the first step of being open is to be present, to be aware of ourselves.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I like this this podcast to be very personal. So, before I move on to your story and some of your ups and downs, where if guys want to get in touch with you and connect with you more about, give them some good practical steps? What if they want more? How can they get a hold of you?
Just my website. So if any guys out there go to risingpath.org, you'll be able to get in touch with me there. Cool.
Risingpath.org. Mm-hmm. And did you say you have a retreat coming up soon?
Yeah, so I'm hosting actually a weekend marriage event in May, Saturday, May 16th and Sunday, May 17th. It's going to be in Beaverton, Oregon at the Luis Palau Association. I've got room for 50 couples, and this is a 2-day conference that seeks to help couples develop deeper connection, more shared purpose, and intimacy with God. So it's a faith-based event, but it's focused very much on practical. How do I connect to my spouse's heart? How do I love them in the way they want to be loved? How do I understand my own story and how it relates to the story of my marriage? And how do we get back to that marriage that we wanted in the beginning, that at some point, because of kids or work or stress, we got sidetracked from?
Sure.
Because a marriage is one of our most important relationships. It can be heaven or hell, and we want to invest in that. We want to invest the time, the energy, the training, the focus to have a marriage that is great and just sustains that way, even with the ups and downs of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always say, we're pretty good about changing the oil in our cars every 3,000 miles or whatever. But when's the last time you actually did some maintenance on your marriage or worked on your marriage? And going to a conference, weekend retreat is such a powerful thing to do. Definitely something that we always encourage people to do, and been a major part of our own story. What about for you? Like, you guys been married 10 years, and over that time, like, what have been some of the most powerful conferences that you've been to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've been a part of more, less on the marriage side. More of our marriage work has come from more the coaching and counseling realm, working with really gifted people in that area.
More in an intimate setting.
More the intimate setting. We've definitely been a part of conferences, but not so much on the marriage focus. But what I'm really trying to do with the conference that I'm hosting is taking everything that I do with a couple over 6 months and distill it into a workshop format. Nice. Where a community of couples can connect with these transformative concepts.
Nice. Cool. All right. So did you guys meet, are you both from the local area here?
We're both from California.
Okay.
So we're beach bums. We met at UC Santa Barbara, so
nice.
University of California, Santa Barbara, beachside university. You don't go to class, you just surf all day.
Nice.
And it's funny. We were actually, funny enough, at a conference together for our youth ministry group, and my wife was part of a group. We were in an In-N-Out Burger, real popular place in California. They've got one here now in Oregon. But we're there, and there's swing dancing music playing. And I just put out a bold question to the group: does anybody want to swing dance with me? And my now wife, I didn't even know her, she volunteered.
Nice.
And we just spontaneously danced together. And that kind of fits the story of who we are. We're both very go for it, take a risk kind of people. And we just really, been in several relationships, but her and I it was really the friendship in our dating that developed in those first 4 to 6 months that was so incredibly powerful.
Nice. That
it was romantic, but it was also about knowing the other person and being known, sharing our secrets, sharing our fears. It set an incredible foundation for where we are now 10 years later.
So that was your courtship time, and then did you get married in California?
We did. Again, us being adventurous, we ended up working with a Christian nonprofit overseas in the country of Turkey. And while we were working for them, we got engaged and then came back to the States and got married. But it was kind of a time of big transition. moving from overseas to the U.S., getting married shortly afterwards.
How old were you?
I was 25.
Okay.
And it was a really stressful time. Like, I was very disoriented, just counterculture shock happening.
Oh, yeah.
I was kind of...
How long were you in Turkey?
I was there for 2 years. My wife was there for a year.
Wow.
So learned a lot of the language.
That'll change you.
Yeah, it was powerful. So get this, I proposed to her in Barcelona, Spain.
Nice.
And then we were planning a wedding overseas, apart from each other, because she was in another part of Turkey.
Okay.
And apart from California, where we're going to have the wedding. So talk about stress. Major stress. And it was kind of continued into the beginnings of our marriage. What started coming up is I started treating my wife in kind of just some ways that I had been treated growing up, more in a controlling, critical way.
Interesting.
And my wife responded by pulling away more. Mm-hmm. And this is happening in the first 2 to 3 months of marriage. And additionally, I'm just dealing with a lot of undealt with stress and past trauma in my life. And it was really this life-changing season where I initiated and said, we need to see a marriage counselor and somebody that really can go deep into our story.
So how did you know you needed a marriage counselor? Because it sounds like it should be obvious, but a lot of guys especially, they're even if they realize I could use a counselor, they're not going to do it. They're not going to bring it up. They're not going to say, hey, babe, let's do this. So it must have been pretty compelling for you to know that was like something to bring up. You mentioned you were kind of in this controlling realm. Did you know you were controlling at the time, or is that looking back you know it?
I think I somewhat knew it, but wasn't owning it.
Okay. So you just knew there was problems. You probably figured it was, she needs some help, so let's go.
Yeah, it was probably, I knew I needed personal help, but I wasn't fully aware of maybe how insensitive I was being in the relationship. I had reached a point in my life where I was at least self-aware enough to understand my own weaknesses and see where, I need... And being open, I was open to other people speaking in my life. I valued that. I wanted that. And so it wasn't hard for me. Maybe I'm different from a lot of guys in that, but that was just part of my wiring is if I've got a problem, I seek help. And even if it's vulnerable or scary, I think sharing honestly hard things is very courageous and strong. Whereas some men look at the opposite, that by being stoic and not needing anyone, that's the definition of strong. I think my father modeled to me what it meant to be able to be weak and to admit weakness and for that to be a strength.
Yeah.
But we really walked.
That takes courage.
It does take courage, and I think that was enough to tip it in. And then I just needed to trust this guide, this very gifted counselor, coach, mentor that really walked my wife and I very gently but purposefully into our own stories. Okay. And it wasn't really, how I was treating my wife was the tip of the iceberg. It was really related to my desire for control based on feeling insecure and based on much deeper things in my heart and soul.
Gotcha.
And so to be able to process through those and having very cathartic moments of just really letting go of a lot of pain from my past and my parents' divorce and being able to come more fully into the present moment. And I'm not ashamed to say that for me, God was very much forefront a part of that process. I felt he had orchestrated this healing process for my wife and I and given it to us as a gift that now 10 years later I get to give to so many other people.
Cool. So you were 26, 27 during this time?
This was 25, so I got married at 25 and then we hopped right into a 2-year journey of really deep inner healing, really deep. But doing the healing together, a lot of people do individual counseling. It was almost like we were doing counseling together.
Nice.
And that really helped us bond and understand our triggers. And I understand why my wife pulls away, and why when I trigger a feeling in her of not feeling good enough, through being critical, she will withdraw and shut down. And when I feel like my wife doesn't notice my heart and my emotions, I'll tend to become more controlling. So discovering these kind of negative cycles and then doing the opposite and continually being sensitive to each other's needs, it almost, I mean, this sounds a weird thing to say, but it's like we got stuck on a honeymoon. Like, it's like we got stuck on a place of really being happy together because we are so in tune with the other person's needs. And even though there were challenges and circumstances, the more in tune we've gotten with each other, the happier we are together. Because we're not getting to stress for very long, and we're helping each other get out of stress. And it's just been a beautiful journey.
One thing that you said that was interesting is this cycle that you said you were on, and I've seen that so many times. It's almost like a thing, right? It's like somehow the very deepest fear or wound that the wife has is related to the very deepest fear or wound that the husband has. And the way that that's triggered, the response makes the cycle worse, right? And so what I've seen seems like over and over again is, if you get to understand what this is, and then it's almost like the fix is almost always believe the exact opposite of what you believe the messages you're getting from your spouse. Like my husband is gonna leave me any minute, and I'm like, the dude is like the most dedicated guy I've ever seen. He's crazy about you. There's no way he's gonna leave you. He's not thinking about that at all. But she 100% believes he's gonna leave any minute. And if she would just like believe the exact opposite of what she's believing, then it will just like totally disrupt the cycle. But I kind of jumped a step, because her belief that he's going to leave me any minute makes her react in a way that triggers his deepest wound, which is, let's say he just doesn't think she's that into him. You know, like, I just want you to love me like I love you, and you don't even seem to love me at all. Maybe is his story, right? And because she's afraid she's going to leave him any second, she's kind of withdrawing, which proves to him his deepest fear, right? So these things just like build on each other. But if they both like will just, somebody has to go first, right? But believe the exact opposite of what you believe about your spouse, and then that's going to change everything. Easier said than done, but I've seen that to be true.
I think that's a great insight, Scott, into, you know, sometimes our perception or our belief isn't rooted in reality, but it feels very compelling, and we continue to live out that narrative. And part of it too is where does that belief come from in our story? Right. And sometimes when we examine our story in a safe place, it allows us to rewrite the story or to reinterpret it. Sure. And a husband that can be attentive to and ask the wife a provoking question of like, what's happened in your life that has led you to believe people are going to leave you? Things like that creates this bond of empathy and understanding, and not just him reacting out of his own pain, and then the triggering just escalates.
Right. And in your story, you were saying that something in your past, your parents' divorce, made you go into a controlling mode. So what was the connection there? Like, what was your biggest fear that you discovered in your counseling time?
Well, I think a lot that happened through my parents divorcing and just the stress in their lives.
How old were you when they divorced?
I was 8 years old.
Okay. Wow.
And I actually don't even remember my dad moving out. Like
Wow.
I have literally like a mental block.
Mm-hmm.
8 years old, you remember things.
Sure.
I don't remember it.
Yeah.
But I think what happened is I didn't, not only was that traumatic, but I didn't feel like I got the opportunity to process it. You know, it's like bad things happen to everyone. And
Sure.
even my kids, you know, there's hard things that happen. But as parents, my wife and I try to be really attentive to help them process those difficult or bad events. Like my daughter was bit by a dog a couple of years ago. Didn't have to go to the hospital or anything, but it was very scary for her. And my wife took about an hour just sitting with her and talking about it and helping her through her tears. I never really felt like I got that kind of support. And so as a result, I've often felt alone. And alone in my pain and in my emotions. And so if I feel like somebody's pulling away, and sometimes I'll try and grab onto that relationship as, no, care about me.
Right.
And in
because
it,
there's a direct connection to that from your dad leaving.
Exactly. And so I was just living out that brokenness in my story with my wife and grabbing on, and it was all about me. It was all about, don't leave me, share yourself with me. And what's interesting is my wife, you know, she grew up with her parents divorced before she was born.
Okay.
And she had a mom that at times would share her depression with her and she would almost fill the role of therapist for her mom.
Interesting.
And so somebody coming in and saying, care about me, deal with this,
right.
She shuts down right away.
Oh.
So if I'm
because there's pain there for her
Uh-huh.
associated with their mom, like that wasn't what. Well, kid's not supposed to be in that role, but
No.
obviously the pain that her mom put on her, she didn't want to have that.
No.
And so that was a trigger for her.
Yeah, it was that no kid should be their parent's therapist, and
Right.
it was just a role that unfortunately she fell into, and she'll often shut down when that happens. So me feeling her maybe pull away, you know, I'd try to grab on closer and share more and control her more and criticize her. Why can't you just listen to me or do this or be this? And which would just continue that cycle.
Yeah. So you guys obviously found your way out of that. So along the 10 years, like, is there, can you think of a time where you just like really messed up? Like, what was a low, what was the low point? Maybe not where you really messed up, but where was a low point in your relationship throughout those 10 years that you maybe had to do some recovery? You had to put some effort into, like, you know, make up for, like, I missed this, you know, I screwed that up. You know, it's not intentional, but it happens, right?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think there's, my wife Kendra is a pretty accommodating person, and so sometimes I think I've probably been screwing up and caring for her more than I should, and I don't always hear about it, you know. But there was a time last year where, you know, she was. I've been doing this coaching work for about 2 years, and things were really picking up for me. And she was looking into where's our daughter going to have preschool, and I basically put it all on her. And I basically, you know, I'm too stressed out with work. You manage. You know, she stays at home. Like, you manage the kids, you manage the house. Like, I can't deal with that. And I think that really did hurt her. I think she worked, you know, she rolled with it, but she really wants me involved in decision making. She appreciates that. Or thinking through things and brainstorming. She wants me to be involved in the things that are important to her and to work through them with her.
So how did you realize that was that didn't go well for her?
Well, it almost blew up in my face, because then she chose a preschool, and I ended up not liking, initially having trouble with the demands. It was a co-op preschool, and so it was putting a lot of demand on her time, and I
Gotcha.
became very critical about that and this is eating up so much of our life. And she's like, well, you had a chance to make your input. And that was kind of my wake up was, okay, I dug this grave for myself. And I realized that I wasn't engaged, and so I was more prone to just complain about how it was going, and that just put more subtle wrenches. It wasn't like our relationship was falling apart, but it was putting some strain. Sure. And so I had to really pivot, and last fall I made some conscious choices. Okay, I want to learn from this mistake. Honey, all right, we're now entering into the phase of choosing a kindergarten. I'm all in with you. Every time, let's talk through all the different kindergartens. Every time there's a tour, I'll come with you. And I tell you what, my wife is just on cloud 9. She's like, this is 1,000 times easier. Yeah. Like, she just loves, we're doing it together. We're making that decision together. And I think it just, maybe guys in general, we do this. I know I can do this sometimes, is I just over compartmentalize. And I'm like, this is your thing, deal with it. No, it's my kids too. Like, let me own it with her. Right. And now I feel involved in it. I feel invested. Yeah. And that feels really good.
Cool. So you kind of learned a lesson from that you wanna make sure that you are involved in those big decisions. So you'll take that going forward.
If I can add one more thought on that as well. I think as well I learned that it's really important for me to understand how my wife thinks about things, and that she's not always going to perfectly. I think sometimes as men as well, we want our wives to spell out crystal clear, this is what I want and need in the moment, and this is exactly what's expected of you. And I just think that's sometimes unrealistic. Sometimes my wife doesn't even know what she wants or needs. She's processing through it, and not that she's incapable of expressing her needs or want, but if I take the initiative to try extra hard to understand her and her point of view and what she needs, she's going to feel so cared about, because she doesn't have to go to all this extra work to always like spell it out like I'm in second grade. This is what you do. I'm more I'm thinking ahead of her and thinking about her, and it's really taken our marriage to the next level to have that.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Like, so you said something about even if she doesn't know what she needs, that's confusing to guys. I know what you mean. I think a lot of guys are like, how do I help her when she doesn't even know what she needs? Like, I'm trying to like hear what she needs, but she doesn't even know what she needs. Like, talk more about that.
I don't know biologically or gender wise how it all works out, but I've seen it play out in my own marriage and a lot of couples that I work with. That there's something really important and special about men initiating, understand, and paying attention to, what their wives need. And really tuning into that. And I'm all for gender equality in a relationship. I just think there's a servant leadership almost in showing up in a way where you're paying attention. I heard from one mentor of mine that attention is the currency of leadership. And I think attention is just the currency of a good relationship, both ways, man and woman. So there was a situation I noticed a couple weeks ago where I was just really busy again with work, and it was getting to the point where my wife and I hadn't gotten an evening together in probably almost 2 weeks. And I could see that in some ways she was becoming more irritable, but she wasn't saying, oh, we need an evening together. And I just I almost guessed maybe it has to do with that. And I just took her aside one morning and said, hey, I just want to have an honest conversation. Like, are you feeling like we're not getting enough time together? I'm feeling the gap a little bit. How are you doing with that? And she kind of thought about it for a moment, and then it clicked for her, and she's like, yeah, that is what I'm feeling. And so I cleared my schedule that night. I was going to go out with a buddy for a beer. I told him no, and we just spent 3 hours in the evening after kids went to bed just connecting and talking and catching up. Yeah. And I felt her whole demeanor change in the days after that. Yeah. But she wasn't necessarily totally tuned into that. And I think that's okay. I think she feels really loved when I can tune into those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think about what's possible in marriage, and that really is an example of what to strive for. What's possible in marriage is to, I mean, if you think about it, as individuals, we're fully capable of going through this life without a partner. But for some reason, it seems to have, by design, something is better when you go through life with a partner. And so, say that's a theory. Then one of the evidences of that, if you find a partner who can actually be in tune with your needs, even when you're not, and help you meet those needs, even when you're not thinking about it. I mean, to me, that sounds like the ideal concept of a marriage. And of course, I know there's a guy listening to this right now who's like, not even close to that right now. Yeah. Like, you might as well be talking to a guy who's broke and saying, hey, wouldn't it be nice to have $1 billion, right? So, you're in this space, an expert working with couples to help them. Like, speak to that guy who is hearing this and be like, yeah, I'm broke and you're talking about $1 billion. Awesome, good for you. Like, I can understand if I had $1 billion, or if I had a spouse who was attuned to my needs, or I have no idea, I don't even understand anything she's saying or doing. Like, how am I supposed to be attuned to her needs? Any wisdom to share with that guy who's like, feels like it's so fairy tale land to even be there? Like, they're not getting along. It feels like we're on we live on different planets. Like, how can he start to bridge that gap?
Great question, Scott. If you've got the vision of what you want for your marriage, if you want to get to this place where you're connected, but it feels like 1,000,000 miles away, it's like any journey. You just need to take the next step.
Okay.
So I would turn the question back on that man, and I would encourage you to ask for yourself, what's my next step? Because it's going to be different for every single person. Maybe it's just, I just ask my wife once in a while, what do you need? Maybe I just need to hear from her what she needs so I can start to develop the awareness. Maybe it's I just take 5 minutes to reflect on what makes my wife come alive. What are the things that energize her?
Once again, I want to remind guys where they can reach you at risingpath.org. And where did that name come up? Where did that name come from?
It's funny. It comes from a story in my marriage. My wife and I, as we spent some time working on healing ourselves and our relationship, it occurred to us that we had really big dreams just to travel and have adventures. So at one point in our marriage, before we had kids, we quit our jobs and we packed up and traveled for 2 years. Went to about 20 different countries, had a lot of great experiences of just hiking and experiencing new cultures.
And this was after the counseling and all that healing took place?
It was after all the counseling and a lot of the healing, and it felt like almost this outward expression of what had happened inside of us, that we had taken a rising path, a new road to a new kind of life where we were living in the ways we had always dreamed of but never thought possible.
That's awesome. I love how the phrase rising path and how it applies to marriage and the context of what we've talked about, that you can go from, I can't even imagine, it feels like we're on totally different planets. I can't imagine having this kind of connection where I see her needs, she sees my needs, and we're attuned to each other. If you just think about the rising path and just stay on the rising path, and there's a lot of hope in that name, and I love that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful image, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, Austin, thanks again. Thank you so much for joining the Husband on Fire podcast. I know that this is going to bring hope to, even if it's just one guy out there, right? But there's hope filled throughout this episode, and I'm really thankful for your time here and for delivering what you have to my Husband on Fire audience. Thank you very much.
Great, Scott. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, and one more thing. If you're in the Portland, Beaverton area, 2020, May 16th and May 17th is your couples retreat. Does it have a name?
It's called the Heart to Heart Marriage Weekend.
Okay, so the Heart to Heart Marriage Weekend, open to 50 couples, May 16th and 17th, 2020. If you are able to get to that, go to risingpath.org and get registered there. And of course, you can get a hold of Austin McRobbie at risingpath.org. Thanks again.
Thanks, Scott.